Glad that you're still here with us on the Morning Express on this 23rd day of March 2015. It is a good day, and as you probably know, and in case you don't, we have the way it is on a Monday morning. And well, I'll go straight into introducing our guests this morning, our panel, a very able panel, which I must say, Sophia, I think got scared of the testosterone in the studio, so she had to run out. And I'll start by just introducing our guest, and I'll start with Senator Hassan Omar, Mombasa County, and also Secretary General for Wiper Party. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I hope you had a good weekend.
It was a great weekend.
You had a good weekend.
Well, quite exciting in terms of the little activities we had. We had a meeting on security. I visited the Jomvu constituency, and I also did a few activities in Vita constituency. So it was a great weekend. You know, the political nature is such that every weekend you try to go back home to see what you can get yourselves involved in, particularly now that we're in session.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Next to him, we also have Jeremiah Kioni, who is former MP for Ndaragwa. Welcome into the studio. I hope you also had a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. We had mine was a quiet weekend, being out of politics. I do more of watching and listening to Omar and others.
And analyzing. All right, we also have Noah Akala, who is ODM Secretary, Science and Technology. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Did you also have a quiet weekend, or was
I
yours
aligned
busy?
myself with Mheshimiwa Kioni's weekend. Quiet and observing.
Okay, and last but not least, Ambrose Weda, who is a lawyer. Welcome, Ambrose.
Thank you.
Great to have you in the studio.
Asante sana.
Good, and I think it's only fair that we start with you.
No, his weekend, he was fighting.
Yeah, I think his weekend, that's why I didn't even ask, because it looked like it was a very active weekend. And Ambrose Weda, maybe you can just, first of all, let us know what happened. I mean, the LSK AGM just twiddled down nearly into a fist fight, something that we did not expect really from our learned friends.
I'll tell you that about a year ago, I told my colleagues, fellow lawyers, that the society is rotting from within. And if we do not deal with it, history will judge us harshly. As a society, we have so much rot that the only thing that has been keeping us alive is punching outside, peeing outside. Government is corrupt inside, but inside we have so many issues. Issues of integrity, issues of theft, issues of... We have deteriorated to the level where even elections we have to buy alcohol, buy food. There's so much. Now this time, some rich members of the Law Society of Kenya were trying to force through the throats of some younger and poorer members a building whose cost is highly overinflated. At
1.2 billion.
1.2, a 5-story building somewhere inside South Sea, costing much more than I say a building at the city center. And then it is being pushed so hard and so arrogantly that when members now say, look, let's reason together, then some people are like, you don't care, you don't matter. So this is what brought the pandemonium. This is now where people came. This is the AGM, one thing resolved. But as usual, some people tried to push through the agenda arrogantly. And the younger lawyers are many, and you know they are digital, so they can go to any length. But the hallmark is that we have a deep rot as a society.
Okay.
But we do not have... do you know that there are young lawyers who are earning 20,000 salary? Some don't even have any places to do pupillage. We are just busy outside. And then corruption has gone so deep. If you want to be chair of the Law Society today, first of all, you must be able to buy alcohol.
Seriously?
You have to. Do a party, buy alcohol, pay people in big hotels. If you don't do that, they tell you no.
Okay. No, what do you have to say, especially...
I thought the matter was in court.
Yes.
And the judges had actually issued an injunction on the matter.
Yes.
So what does that, I mean, I'm trying to now also be the devil's advocate. So why would the lawyers not just wait for the outcome of the court?
What was in court was, I think what was in court is linking the certificate, the process certificate with the payment. Okay? And then there was a bought up SDA. Now, the main organ now was sitting. And members took occasion to say, look, we want to look at it. and then we also want to see whether we remove the people in office. That even would have resolved the case in court. Members would have then debated and said unanimously want to go on with the building. If they say they want to go on with the building, that would have resolved the case. If they say you want to stop the building, that would have again resolved the court case. But because a few people thinking in billions, there are people who, in Kenya now it is fashionable to think in billions.
Okay. Noah, what are your comments, especially given that Weda, who is a lawyer, admits that there's a lot of rot, and of course there was accusations of Eric Mutua having dished out 20 million to some lawyers, and you know he's admitted and said there's some lawyers who are broke, the others who are rich. What are your comments on this?
I'm more concerned about the bigger picture, the deterioration of societal watchdogs. Start with the LSK, the EACC, Parliament. When we have so many questions arising about the integrity of these institutions that are supposed to provide checks and balances on malpractice in society, be it from the executive and other people mandated with public management and governance, then we begin to lose the plot. So I'm more worried about the impact this will have on the LSK's ability to provide oversight on the activities of the government of the day.
All right, Jeremiah?
I think it is, the picture that comes out is, you know, in these institutions there will always be different opinions. It's really a question of how we decide to resolve the differences that we have. That was a very horrible picture that we saw the lawyers do. We had a similar one in Nakuru, the county assembly. We saw members of parliament passing an act or a bill in a very acrimonious manner. I think we must look back and ask ourselves, is really this what we want to see the society do? Because opinions will always differ, but the way you resolve them is what is important, and what goes out to the public is more important than the differences that are there. And I don't think the lawyers gave us a good example.
That was not a good picture.
It wasn't a good picture.
Senator?
You know, whatever the differences were, there are certain institutions that must be beyond, on a certain pedestal. I think however young you are, or however poor you are, or however aggrieved you are, there's a certain decorum that comes with certain professions and institutions, and that must never be lost. It's not that we also do not agree with a fundamental number of issues and things that do happen in our day-to-day, institutions that we participate in almost on a regular basis. But we need to see what are the institutional mechanisms. I thought, and now thanks for the clarity from Ambrose, I had thought that the matter was already in court, and therefore some of those matters that were being prosecuted in that manner were already being prosecuted in court, and therefore there was no need for that kind of hassle. I think that is one of the profession that is so celebrated world over, that I think an AGM turning into some kind of a political circus, as if it is in one of our party headquarters or in our own coalitions, is really...
Are you saying it's okay for it to be in politics?
I'm not saying it's okay. What I'm trying to say is that there are certain institutions that should insulate themselves of that type of... I remember when I was being, the political stakes are usually very high, often time. And that's why sometimes you see the kind of thuggery, hooliganism, whatever you might want to call it, even in university politics. But I am not trying to justify that or validate it. Right. But what is it that our learned brothers and sisters could not resolve in an amicable way? I saw my young brother Kanjama saying, I must speak. And of one of the lawyers with distinction is Kanjama. So I think there needed to be a tempering down of the kind of hostilities internally. And that's exactly what Mheshimiwa Kioni is saying. MCAs are doing the same thing. We are seeing replicated in our institutions of parliament. So I think it's a thing that we also borders on tolerance and having faith in the institutional mechanisms to be able to resolve certain matters. I think you people here in KTN might also be aggrieved. In many situations, you cannot get absolute, concurrence. Right. So, but the institutional mechanisms.
There is a way to sort that out.
Absolutely, and I think that was a big dent for the legal fraternity, right. And I think what they need to do, even if it might, I have heard some saying, it was nothing, Kitogo to actually. Even if it was that Kitogo, they need to stand up somewhere and say, it's like having a meeting of the chaired by Cardinal Njue. of the Catholic justice, or for instance, the church that where that attends to the clergy not agreeing on a building, and it degenerating. You have to look at it also from a broader point of view.
Okay. I guess whether we'll come to the actual procurement process, because for it to be overpriced isn't their process. But before we get there, aren't there some rules that govern the law society of Kenya, or the lawyers, that would suggest or ensure that we actually don't have a meeting degrade down to this kind of thing? And if they are there, why weren't they obeyed?
There are actually rules that govern our meetings, and they're very good rules. This time, I think, and I dare say that my friend and classmate, the chairman, Eric Mutua, lost it. Because what brought the pandemonium was his refusal to give people a chance to debate. The very problem that took place at the special AGM. So this time, these people came prepared. They had sent a motion that was to be included in the agenda. This motion, the council left out, okay? So at the floor of the House, people were saying, we would like, on a point of order, to reorder the agenda and then to put back the motions that you had left out. One of the motions was to suspend the building. The second motion was actually to remove the entire council, including the chairman. Now, the agenda is set by the council. So when the council was setting the agenda, they left those ones out. So coming at the AGM, people say, let us debate this. The chairman, on the other hand, is no. And then in these AGMs, what normally happens with the chairman, they have their hench people. One seated there, one seated there, one in the middle, one there. So you raise your hand and then give so and so. So we have known all these tricks, but because they have not been very serious issues, you let go. But this time it was a very serious issue. So we say, we know so and so, let so and so speak. When he refused to do that, and was going on with a tendency which was dictatorial, then people insisted that had to change. So what did he do? He walked out. Then we read the next regulation and said, we appointed an interim chairman who conducted the meeting, and the resolutions were passed. So it is the way he conducted the meeting
that brought it down to what it was.
Especially on a very, very critical issue that required debate and scrutiny.
Those accusations of money changing hands from Waiguru, and this is to Eric Mutua. What are your comments on that?
During the KANU days in the 1980s, I remember when I was in primary school and later in secondary school, whenever an MP or a politician faced issues, you'd say money has been forwarded from foreign powers. Moi, on the other hand, if he wanted to finish you, you'd say some people have been given money by foreign powers. Now the foreign powers ended, then it went to now KANU money. Now it is government money. I think during Kibaki's time, because Kibaki was stingy, nobody thought
money was exchanged.
Yes, so nobody would accuse government of pouring money. But people think this. So this thing of 20 million being poured, that's just a smoke screen to cover up the real issue of the building. And Waiguru did not put the building. He did not start it. He did not. Let's not cover up. We have one issue: the building and issues of integrity at the Law Society.
Okay, before we move away from that, Senator, do you think that Eric was, showing high-handedness in refusing for this to be debated?
And for me, I think an institution like the Law Society must be able to withstand any type of debate, whether it touches on certain fundamentals, because that's where lawyers must be synonymous with democratic struggles. And I think sometimes democracy sometimes believes that you must have the most extreme of discussions. And therefore, I think there should be no debate that, to say the least, lawyers are unable to debate on. So I'm not quite familiar with the proceedings, but if there was any attempt to stifle debate, then that was a real show of poor leadership. I think you must allow sometimes. In fact, so, what I've realized, at least in the political space, if a matter is so heated, it is so emotive. I remember what we had with our retreat for the Centrum for the Wiper Democratic Party, when members came with literally perceived positions and perceptions about who is the enemy to what, who is doing what. So what happened is the chairperson, Senator Musila, allowed a very, very robust ventilation. In fact, we spent almost a full day. You can call anybody, anything,
So in
pour
short,
out your heart.
it should be allowed.
Usually it is very therapeutic. I have realized that whenever an issue is so, emotive, or is so controversial, or is so pertinent, as Weda puts it, you need to allow ventilation. In fact, you will find that once you give that session out, it becomes totally therapeutic.
All right, Jeremiah, you wanted to say something?
Majority of the Kenyans will not be bothered with the details Ambrose is trying to bring out. And I tell you, what is scary to us as a country is when you start seeing institutions that cannot sit around the table and agree on an issue. And yet these are the people you have entrusted with your lives, with the future of this country, with the growth of this country.
Right.
And every time there is a small issue, we call them small because they are in those positions to resolve issues. When they are and every time they have an issue before them, all that comes out is people wanting to punch one another. It is a very worrying trend in the country.
Okay.
And also, I think it is important that leadership is required, because this should not be replicated in many other areas. Nations fail or collapse when institutions cannot hold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some final
Very
comments
briefly,
on this.
Very briefly.
My view, this is a snowball effect coming as a result of a culture established since March 4th, 2013 in the country. The core principles, Raila Odinga, Moses Wetangula, and Kalonzo Musyoka, had called for dialogue in the country, and the Jubilee side of the political divide was so resistant to talking about the issues at the time: security, runaway corruption, poor governance and management of the country. And then, hot on the heels of that, in Parliament, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mheshimiwa Justin Muturi, was also very resistant to allowing divergent views in the House during the debate on the security laws. And as a result of this, we're beginning to see a culture established in the country where if you're heading an institution and an issue is uncomfortable to you, you stifle debate. And that's just what we've seen with the LSK as well.
So the Law Society of Kenya has not been left out. Let us move, still staying in the corridors of justice, but move on to something else, the judicial service appointments, which we saw also trigger some debate. And maybe, Senator, I'll start with you, with the President appointing Winnie Nguchu and Mr. Kipngetich into these positions a year later. It's taken so long to get them there. Do you read anything into this, and would this be a way of maybe the government trying to maintain a certain control of the judicial system?
I think what happens is these are political appointments. And even when you see it in other countries, where so let's say in the US, when the Supreme Court vacancy opens when a Republican presidential candidate is in power, or a Democrat presidential president is in power, then you find that they tend to sway within the pendulums of their own interests. So you are more likely to get a liberal judge if Obama is appointing one, and a conservative judge when, let's say, Bush Jr. or any other person, a Republican is appointing one. So they will have this. So for me, I think what is replicating itself is the fact that we tend to, live in that same line of paradigm. So for me, what is a bit concerning is that the Chief Justice's term is almost coming to an end.
Correct.
So what will happen is, I think Uhuru is building the critical constituency within the GSA that will influence the outcome of the Supreme Court, the judge of the court of the Chief Justice. And I think that will lead to a shift in terms of how the court is doing business. Not that we are fully satisfied with what the court is doing, but I can see you find a few fusions of objectivity. You take the Security Law Amendment Act, you can get a judgment that is fairly, robust. You go for other, decisions, and that you have to realize that also at that level of the Supreme Court, where a vacancy will be opening, and I think 2 vacancies will be opening sooner than later, the Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice. It means, therefore, it sways the balance of favor, even in terms of a presidential petition, in favor of the appointing authority. So I think what we need to do is to be very, very transparent in appointment of these positions. look at what we did, the catastrophe of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. The president just sent Kabue's name without the necessary procedure. And this temptation of trying to proliferate commissions with allies so that you can weaken them from the inside, I also want to believe there is a bit of machination in terms of even the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to try and influence the outcome of that commission. So I think I can almost read the bigger picture of what the whole agenda is.
All right, Weda, what do you have to say about that? Given that it took more than a year to actually get this appointment, then suddenly we see them coming up, and of course somebody like Winnie Nguchu is a close ally to the president.
Not a close ally, TNA.
She's a former TNA executive
CEO.
director.
Correct.
Yeah.
You appoint, you're damned. You don't appoint, you're damned. That is where the president finds himself. Now, let me tell my colleague and colleagues, the JSC is comprised of a team, and they literally vote. And this team, the president seems to have a say on only those two. Okay? And maybe the attorney general. The others, he has absolutely no control. And they form the majority. You get it? So trying to make himself, there will be a petition, there will be this, I think that's just stretching to just make what the president has done appear like there's a trick. Don't fear President Uhuru so much. He's not such a tricky man. It has been wrong that there has been a delay for that long, 1 year. Actually, these people should have been appointed a year ago. But that appointment has now come, and it is welcome. It is upon those people who have been appointed to deliver and leave a legacy for this country. If they choose to go there and mess it up, hoping and thinking that they are messing it up for President Uhuru, that will be their own mistake. I do not think the president has given them a brief that go in there and mess up things on my behalf. No. The president, I believe, means well.
Okay.
But let me just add, there are various appointments coming, especially one of the Chief Justice and one of the Deputy Chief Justice. Those are critical. All we expect of the JSC as a team is to give us a better man or woman, not an Uhuru man or a TNA man or a Jubilee man. This country does not need, this country just needs you and me and Omar. If my brother Omar is qualified and you fit the bill, I'm sure you'll go through. It will not be President Uhuru saying, I don't want Omar.
All right, no?
For me, there are two issues. One of them is that it appears as though this culture of dividing the country between TNA and URP is being perpetuated through these JSC appointments. One is a close ally of the president, the other is a close ally of the deputy president. And it begs the question for the president's part, because this lady served as a commissioner in the now defunct IIEC.
Right.
Are there no other qualified Kenyans? Why are we recycling individuals through various commissions that serve the interests of the public? Then, for me, the second issue is that what competitive process was utilized, what criteria was used in arriving at these two appointments? If we're going to have people nominated to such crucial commissions, then we need to see a more open, a more clear manner in selecting these individuals, not just hand-picking those who suit you. And unfortunately, this has been typical of the Uhuru administration. Look at the nomination of the Inspector General of Police, Bwana Boynet. What competitive process did this go through? I mean, we can't continue in this way.
Okay, Jeremiah, there's been word going around that there's been, a bit of tension between URP and TNN. It has been suggested in certain corridors, or alleged, that the reason why this delay was there is because they could not maybe reach a consensus. Could this be true?
Wow. TNA, URP politics. The tension between the parties will for sure be there. And because you can trace this by the way the two blocks came together. But, and I don't know whether I really would want to attribute the delay to that. I think the position of Kobia has remained vacant for longer than just last year, because Kobia did not even take up the appointment from the former
before.
president.
And of course, it's never been said why he took an early retirement.
Yes,
He's still silent about that.
So I think there are many things that we can try and lead in this. The thing I think is important is that even when we were constituting JSC, when we were in the 10th Parliament, or trying to work on the composition of those who would sit in the Judicial Service Commission, the intention was that, yes, we have those two positions that the president can directly influence by bringing people whom he has faith in, because that, again, you cannot deny it from the person who is in power. But what is crucial, I think, is what Ambrose was mentioning. We have others who are members of the JSC from the institutions. And if the institutions are firm and strong, then we should be able to see some credible persons taking over the positions that are likely to fall vacant. But I want to go back and say one of the institutions is the Royal Society of Kenya. When you now see them quarreling, fighting over issues they should ideally agree, then you can tell those quarrels will affect all the other institutions that they have an influence over, because they really play a role in determining who sits in the JSC, and also, by and large, who are likely to be our Chief Justice or the Deputy. So my concern is when these institutions are not holding, the two positions appointment by the President, fine, they may not have agreed, but eventually they gave us two persons, and I think we can only guess that they were quarreling. We did not see them quarreling like we quarreled at the Royal Society of Kenya. But I think what I want to emphasize is the need to ensure that the institutions that have been entrusted with the management of the affairs of this country hold and earn the respect from us as Kenyans.